Okay, so my uh, ToK presentation revolves around the recent event of the election. More specifically, it's about the claims that were being made about uh, voter fraud or election fraud, whichever, um, that it was being committed, and I was able to see this through different media outlets, and which led me to read more about it in an article. And this led me to think about how crucial or how important evidence is to making a claim, and which also determines the how reliable and how supported our claim can be, which is the justification for our claim. And my research question from this is that I was able to make was, to what extent is evidence needed in order to create a justified claim? And there being evidence and justification, two really important things in my knowledge question. The first point that I want to make is the type of evidence that is always important when we present or argue a claim, because the type of evidence is what determines how strong our claim can be, and why it should be considered. The type of evidence that should be used, it has to be objective and relevant to the claim, which it provides a level of trust that there is evidence or factual evidence that supports our claim. And a good example of this that I found was something personal, was like whenever I have to write an essay about any sort of topic, is when I make a claim, and then I have to go find the evidence for it to back it up, and that is really important to my claim, because it helps me support it, and it creates I guess it clarifies the claim, and there is different evidence which is based on intuition and like prediction. However, that type of evidence is not really the strongest, because it's mainly based on like on on someone's own like words, which isn't super reliable. And a good like example of this is just like hearsay evidence, which is used like often, and it isn't really used or accepted in a court case. Let's see. My second point that I want to make is the importance of how we create or how we gather evidence, because it allows us to gather evidence that is pretty relevant to our claim, and I feel like that this like process of getting evidence is like really trustworthy, and this evidence can be made from like systematic observation, which leads to facts, and it helps reach conclusions. Yeah, it's also objective and specific, which and there is and from a different standpoint, there can be times where people will just will not accept that evidence, that type of trustful evidence, because I guess there's a type of or a degree of denial from it that doesn't set well with them. And I think I guess a good example of this is the belief that certain ethnic groups are not good people, and that's a claim that where those are a lot of beliefs, but there's not a lot of factual evidence to support those beliefs, and it really shows how important factual evidence is, and those beliefs are really like subjective to have in a claim, which isn't really the best to have. My third point that I want to make is how we should present our claim. So there could be a sense of comprehension and trust. There are three things where how we should present. It should be made clear that where the evidence came from. Then it should be made known who created it or who produced the evidence being used. And then finally, it should be known where or why that evidence is being used for this argument or claim. And I guess a good example of this is where when making like a science report, I had to source like reliable like websites or scientists to back up my claims that I was making. And again, there could be a degree of denial of where the evidence came from and who produced it, because there can be like a denial of how trustworthy the producer of the evidence, which really hinders their ability to accept the claim. And the most reliable and consistent producers are like a lot of well trusted scientists, doctors, and anybody who can be reliable and consistent. And the final point that I want to make is that my real life situation about election fraud or voter fraud is like it brought ideas of how claims should be made. It should be well constructed. It should have reliable and consistent evidence which supports it, and there should be like a good justification of the evidence. and which is and those components are just the most important to make when making an argument or a claim, and I think it could really solve a lot of like political, in the context of my event, like it could solve a lot of political claims being made, and also it can also be used in like